Welcome to The Landscape, your show about America's parks and public lands. I'm Aaron Weiss at the Center for Western Priorities in Denver. Kate is out for a couple more weeks, but she'll be back soon. Our guest today represents the off-road and motorsports community. Jonathon Klein is the editor-in-chief of RideApart. He's an avid motorsports enthusiast and writes about the connection between off-road activities and access to public lands. My colleague, Lauren Bogard, will join us for that in a couple minutes. We're excited to talk to Jonathon and hear a perspective from public lands users that's a little different than what we usually hear on this podcast. Before we get to that, let's do the news. The Trump administration announced this week that it is moving the headquarters of the U.S. Forest Service from Washington, D.C. to Salt Lake City. If that sounds familiar, well, you'll remember that during President Trump's first term, they pulled the same move with the Bureau of Land Management, shipping its headquarters to Grand Junction, Colorado. 90% of the D.C.-based staff declined to relocate and left the agency. The Biden administration eventually moved BLM back to Washington. So naturally, the Trump folks are running the same playbook, but this time with the Forest Service. About 260 Forest Service positions in D.C. will be ordered to move. The agency is also killing off 9 regional offices and replacing them with 15 state directors, and consolidating all of its research operations into a single facility in Fort Collins. That means closing research facilities in 31 states, and I guarantee a bunch of those scientists are not in a position to pack up and move to Colorado tomorrow, as lovely as Fort Collins is. Now here's the thing. About 90% of the Forest Service workforce already works outside of Washington, which means the people being uprooted are the ones who work with Congress, who fight for budgets, and who coordinate across the federal government. As former BLM Deputy Director Steve Ellis put it, if you want to downsize the federal government and push federal employees out, this is how you do it. I said basically the same thing to The Guardian. This is all part of the administration's attack on science and the scientists that the country depends on for healthy public lands. The ecological and institutional knowledge that gets lost when you shut down research stations across the country could take a generation to restore. And then there's the God Squad. On Tuesday, a panel of 6 Trump administration officials voted unanimously to exempt all oil and gas drilling in the Gulf of Mexico from the Endangered Species Act. This is something called the Endangered Species Committee, better known as the God Squad, because it has the power to decide whether a species lives or dies. It met for the first time since 1992, and only the 4th time in the committee's nearly 50-year existence. The whole meeting lasted about half an hour. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth requested the exemption, arguing that lawsuits protecting endangered species in the Gulf threaten national security, especially with the war in Iran driving up oil prices. No outside scientists were invited to testify. By comparison, when the God Squad met in 1992 over the northern spotted owl, the deliberations there went on for nearly 4 weeks, and this time they didn't even bother. The species most immediately at risk is the Rice's whale, a critically endangered baleen whale found only in the Gulf of Mexico. Scientists estimate that only about 50 of these whales are left on Earth. The Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010 killed roughly 20% of the population. Boat strikes are a major threat, and the protections that are being waived here, well, it's things like slowing down oil industry boats near whale habitat so captains can see the whales and avoid hitting them. And here's what makes this particularly galling. A 2025 analysis from the National Marine Fisheries Service found that the Endangered Species Act had not actually restricted the amount of oil being produced in the Gulf. The U.S. is already the world's largest oil and gas producer. The Gulf of Mexico accounts for about 15% of our domestic crude output. Production has been humming along. This isn't about unlocking new energy. This is just about removing the last legal guardrails protecting an animal that only has 50 members left on the entire planet. Patrick Parenteau is an emeritus law professor at Vermont Law School who's been involved with every major God Squad proceeding in its history. He pointed out here, if President Trump is successful, he could be the first person in history to knowingly drive a species to extinction. That is the God Squad, being led by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. A literal government death panel for an entire species, rubber stamped in about 30 minutes. Our guest today is the editor-in-chief of RideApart, an online news source and review hub primarily dedicated to all things off-highway vehicles and motorized access, and occasionally these days delving into public lands advocacy. Jonathon Klein, welcome to The Landscape.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the warm welcome.
You've written about spending time on public lands with your family, camping, riding, hunting, and fishing. So tell us what role have public lands played in your life, and how does that shape your interest in writing about these issues?
So I grew up in Chicago. There's a lot less public lands than here in Utah, where we moved to. But I always spent time on public lands. My earliest memories are of fishing along rivers and lakes with my friends and my family, and then moving to California for about a decade, and moving now to Utah. Public lands have become such an integral part in my life and my family's life that I can't really escape what's happening to them. Nor do I really want to. I want to now, given what we're going through, it's become an advocacy need for me to not only continue doing what I love to do, which, as you point out, I do a lot of things on public lands, but also for my kids too.
So, Jonathon, you are the first person I think we've had on the Landscape podcast who represents an off-road, off-highway vehicle community. And I'd love for you to help us understand what what is included within that community. What terms should we use as we're diving into this conversation? Can you help us understand uh, who all is included?
It's a lot of people. It is a lot of people. Like, off-roading is probably the easiest term, but that encompasses a lot of different niche groups within that. You have the 4x4 guys who are running trucks and SUVs, and you have the UTVers who are running UTVs, side by sides, stuff from Polaris and Can-Am and Kawasaki and Honda. You have the dirt bikers who segment themselves off from the adventure motorcyclists for some odd reason. You have the ATVers. You have eh, jet skiers. Technically, are using public land because they're using public waters. You have a ton of people that operate in this, and then you have the other segments that don't consider themselves off-roaders, but that use off-road vehicles to get to their intended destinations. So you have the campers who need to get into the backcountry. You have the hunters who need to get back into the backcountry. You have all these people that utilize off-road vehicles to do certain segments, but sometimes they don't consider themselves. But they're all within this larger public land user realm. So you have that's kind of the gist. My site specifically goes and talks to the folks in the powersport community. So that's the ATV, the UTV, snowmobilers are also included. I forgot them in that group. Dirt bikers and that. Anyone who uses those type of machines are who I primarily talk to. But it encompasses a pretty large segment of the population.
That's one of the things I think that sometimes gets lost in this discussion about the economic impact of public lands and public lands recreation. Obviously, OHV motorized use is a big part of that economically. The report we just saw last week is over $1 trillion in overall economic contribution. Do you have any thoughts as to why the scale of that economic story doesn't show up more in these political debates that we've seen over the last year, especially about selling off or transferring public lands?
I have my theories of why that might occur. Yeah, it's staggering. It really is when you start to break it down to the brass tacks of what you're dealing with and the economic impact that OHV and all of the subsets that use those things for public lands, that it isn't a bigger like stop sign for politicians to be selling it off. Because I think it might just come down to it is so varied. It is so many different groups, And we also have a real hard time coming together and talking to one another, at least in the past. Last year, with the big beautiful bill and Senator Lee's sell-off, everyone kind of came together, and like I love making the joke. You had these like crunchy granola folks coming together with the quote unquote bloodthirsty hunters, and them just doing the old uh, predator meme of the two arms just coming together and being like, yeah, we got this together. But we haven't really talked to one another for a long time, and we all think of each other as the enemy, to put it lightly. You go into forums, you go into comment threads or social media, and you'll have everyone fighting with each other to have their own specific group elevated, or I want more of this and you can't have that. It's like, no, like we all have to come together. And I think that might be the biggest kind of hurdle in this group, and why politicians don't listen to us or listen to the economics all the time, is because you look at the oil industry or the extractive industries or even the housing industries, they're a concerted block. They come in, they have lobbyists, they have everyone, and they're all on the same page. You come to us, and it's 17 different groups. And it's just like, okay, who am I actually listening to? Because like you have backcountry hunters and anglers and tread lightly and all these other groups, and they're all just kind of out there, and they're all trying to make that impact, but they're not coming together to work together as a collective.
Have you stumbled across a need in this public land space just to have more folks sitting down and talking to each other, so that the ultra marathoners are talking to the snowmobilers, are talking to the family fishermen out with their kids catching trout and going home at the end of the day?
Oh yeah, I mean, there isn't that kind of conversation that's happening, at least not at like a larger level. Like Trout Unlimited should be talking to the ultra marathoners or the campers or the hikers or the climbers. The Snowmobile Association should be talking to the ATVers, or they should be talking to the off-road community. Like it just, those types of conversations are just not being had right now. And so you get these just compartments of a thing that we all love, that we all utilize. And you just get these kind of weird echo chambers of like nothing gets done, nothing progresses when it absolutely should, because we all do share the love for the outdoors.
All right, so let's get into these political debates and
Ugh.
and let's start naming some names. So Jonathan, you've written critically about efforts by politicians like Mike Lee and other Utah legislators to facilitate some of these land sales or transfers. So I'm curious, what concerns you most about these proposals?
They're being done with such haphazard intent that there is no coming back from this, right? Like once land is sold, it's sold. It's never coming back unless you get, you know, one of us strikes it rich at the Powerball and gets $1 billion. We're in Utah, we can't get that. So we're kind of SOL. It's just sold off, and it's sold off to industries that don't care, and just it's going to be strip mined. Now, luckily, I will say this. There is a glimmer of hope in this, and I am still very much concerned about land sales in general, especially here in Utah. But land sales in general. A bunch of public land was put up for auction in Alaska recently, and no one bid on it. And that's good because everyone sees that it could be bad. But like you have places like the Boundary Waters, you have places like the Ambler Road, like there are industrial mines that are happening. So we can't like take our foot off the gas on that type of stuff, but there is some glimmers of hope that that people are going to see the public outrage and not do the bad thing. But again, our current senators in Utah, they are trying, and our representatives. There was, I think it was HB 546. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it passed. It won. I spoke up about it, but the language is so vague and so non-defined in terms of what is going to get sold, because it's a public lands sell-off bill. It pretty much made anything, any type of public lands possible for sale. And for folks like us, we should be concerned about that, because it's so vague that it could mean anything. It could mean any public lands for sale. There's so much that it's so hard to keep straight sometimes.
Well, you did mention glimmers of hope, so I'm hoping this will segue into that. You live in Utah, so I'm curious
Do.
your perspective of someone living in the state of Utah. How do you think these proposals are are viewed by residents and outdoor users in the state of Utah?
I think everyone hates them, but I think we've been conditioned as a society to believe that politics are for someone else, that it doesn't matter to us, that, and we have become apathetic to the political process due to both parties being really hopelessly bad at communications and also doing what's best for the actual general public. So, as much as I think that all the users, all the actual people on the land that are using it, the hunters, the anglers, the off-roaders, the 4x4s, the dirt bikers, climbers, everybody, that entire group of public land users firmly believes that this is bad. It's the one issue that the American people can come together and being like, no, public lands are good. It's like the one issue that we all can agree on. I think those people see it as bad, which is good, because when they continue these land sales or continue to try to push these land sales, more people are going to become attuned to this. Do I think enough people are actually speaking out against this? No. I think a lot of people came together last year, and because it was such a monumental push by everyone, by social media, by all the big names within their respective industries, riled up their folks. They said it no, but not enough people have continued. So, oh yes, the people on the ground do not believe in land sales, but we need all of them to continue to, they can't take their foot off the gas on this. And that's why I've continued to write about these stories and to call my senators and call my representatives and being like, no. But I hope more people will engage in that political process so that they can tell them to, I don't know if I could swear in this. Can I swear? Like,
You can swear.
fuck off. like they need to, they have to stop this. But I need more people to go email their senators that statement in maybe in nicer terms, but they need to talk to them. They need to know that we don't support this.
One of the things that gets me about these arguments is that I think the arguments being made for a land sell-off are not being made in good faith. Generally, they're dishonest. They're not being straightforward about what would happen or what it's actually why it's being done, and that always leads me to a group called Blue Ribbon Coalition, which has been on our radar for years as one of the primary disinformation groups when it comes to public lands. And this is a group that at least advertises themselves as speaking up on behalf of the OHV community. You wrote a piece that was pretty critical of Blue Ribbon Coalition about some proposed trail closures in the Mojave, saying that what was going on there was not as Blue Ribbon Coalition claimed. How did they get on your radar, and what's your take in particular as a Utahn? This is a group that is run by Mike Lee's nephew.
Yep. Public land enemy number one. I was actually at a recent backcountry hunters and anglers night. We led the group of individuals, not the actual BHA members, led a chant of "fuck Mike Lee." But then we were told by Jess Johnson, who I believe has been on the podcast.
I love Jess. Yes,
Jess is awesome. She reminded us replace Mike Lee. Anyway. Yeah, BRC came to my attention a while back as, a handful of friends were reposting their stuff about some closures in southern Utah, and I started looking into them and looking into like what was going on. And a lot of it stemmed from kind of bad faith arguments. I'm on the mindset people need to do things legally. I have been critical of both sides of the aisle in terms of public land management and policies. If someone does something wrong, if someone closes something for improper methods or methodology without scientific backing or without like public consensus or public input, I'm going to call you out no matter who you are. That's not what they were doing. They were kind of just going off and being like, well, we don't like this. And you're like, okay, did you comment? And people did, and they just got beaten in certain things. But then I started looking into it more and started looking into them more. And I found out, like you said, their executive director, Ben Burr, is the nephew of Senator Mike Lee. He also worked on Lee's campaign for, I think, a decade. He's also a trustee for Utah Public Lands Alliance. Now, those two organizations came together last year and put out a statement during the whole Mike Lee amendment that was just like downplaying the severity of the public land sale. And yeah, like it just, they were trying to push a narrative. You can see, like, it's still up on Utah Public Lands Alliance's website that they were trying to push this through. They were trying to tell their base that this was okay. Nothing was actually going to happen. We all know that absolutely wasn't true. Actual conservationists, actual public land advocates, everyone in their right mind could see through those guises. And I recently talked about them and about their Mojave position. Now, the Mojave one is an interesting one because the federal government didn't do it right. They didn't do the land study right. They screwed up. They didn't do it legally. So they have to go back and do it legally. And that's not to say that the Mojave, the land management program, is going to get canceled. It could go the way of the roads, the trails opening back up. But they have to do it right. Like, that's the point. That's the point of having these things. Now, there's a lot to it in these travel management programs. Like, there's a lot that they have to do right so that we all can enjoy it. I would say that they should be more critical of the BLM and of the Department of the Interior cutting travel management programs, like gutting those offices, gutting those things, but they haven't said anything about them. So I find that more suspicious than anything else. Like, if you're not talking about the actual fire in the room, and you're talking about that little smoldering cinder over here, where are your priorities?
So you mentioned you'd like to see more folks within this community making calls and showing up and speaking out on these issues. I'm curious, do you think people in the off-road community are aware of how directly these policy debates affect the trails and riding areas that they love?
I think to a degree, but again, like goes back to the apathy. Like we've been kind of apathetic to the political process and apathetic to how the political process affects us. We all go into national forests and BLM land and just public lands in general, and you see those signs and like managed this and trail closures here and like signage that tells us like what's going on. But not enough people read it. Not enough people are engaged with the public lands debates and news that are coming out. And I think that's to a disservice to us all. And we only get engaged when it starts to affect us, like directly affects us. Like you'll go to a spot and you'll be like, it just says road closed, and you won't know why. It'll have been posted for months. The BLM or whoever, any public land agency, will have had comment periods, will have had notice of intent, but no one has engaged in those things. No one's engaged enough at a local level that they know ahead of time. Now it's up to us as I was going to say content creators, but as advocates to hopefully inform our bases better so that they aren't caught unaware. And hopefully those bases tell their friends and their friends tell their friends, and then they can get more engaged. But right now, I mean, hopefully more people are aware of this because of last year's fight, because of last summer's fight. Hopefully more people are aware of what is going on with public lands. More people are paying attention to it.
You talked about the need for these travel management plans, the travel management offices that are getting cut. Obviously, the flip side of that is that the oil and gas leasing staff continues to get staffed up, and the oil and gas leasing continues at a crazy pace. Just to state the obvious, you can't go hiking or ride your ATV through an oil rig.
No.
Um,
In fact,
and
no.
and I think that gets us to this bigger issue of how do you do this planning? How do you do multiple use? How do you do travel planning? How do you get the hikers and the hunters and the off-roaders and the oil and gas folks and the geothermal folks all around the table while an agency is being gutted or told to just focus on one thing? Because if all you see is assets on a balance sheet, then the minerals you can extract take precedence over everything else. So what do you think the path forward is for getting all of these other voices together, even in a case where maybe in a more normal time you might see more conflicts between the non-motorized and the motorized users? Is this in some ways, I guess, an opportunity to see things through each other's eyes?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Again, we all came together. We all did it. We all did the thing. And we all came together and we just kind of put away our differences and we all remembered that we have a shared love. It is absolutely a fantastic opportunity to do that. And to do that on our own. Like you say, like, all these places are getting cut, all these departments are getting cut. It's on us. At the end of the day, everything is on us. We have to do it ourselves. So the off-roaders need to come to the table. The hunters need to come to the table. The non-motorized users need to come to the table. And we all need to be, remind ourselves before we start talking, hold on, we all love this place. We all want to protect this place. And then we get into compromise. I know everyone hates that word, but these are multiple use spaces. And the one thing I do want to say, we also have to remind ourselves of what I love. There's a rule, it's the 90-10 rule. 90% of the users of any group are going to be law-abiding, lovely individuals, and just be perfect stewards to whatever they're doing. Then you have the 10% of the yahoos who are going to make the loudest commotion and everyone's going to hate them. But everyone has to remember that the 90-10 rule applies to everyone. It's not just the dirt bikers who have this 90-10 rule. It's not just the hunters who are applying the 90-10 rule. It is literally everyone. I can have anecdotal evidence of literally any single group. So if we can all remember that, 1, we love this place. 2, we need to protect this place. And 3, there's 10% of the population that we probably need to hit over the head. I think we can all come to the table and actually start compromising and solidify the public lands voice in ways that we haven't done since like Roosevelt. Like, we could come together and we can just plant our flag in the proverbial, public land ground and be like, no, 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 no. We're going to be actual good stewards to this. But we need to do that. But we have that opportunity, like you said. We have the best opportunity right now because we're all pissed off. That is the perfect time to actually start doing stuff.
I love that. Um, Totally agree that we all have a responsibility, all the different public lands users and activities to be good stewards. But I wonder if you could just give more detail or put a finer point on what does responsible trail use and stewardship look like for the off-road community?
I've got some great organizations I want to throw at you. Tread Lightly and the Gambler 500. Those folks are doing amazing stewardship projects, both in trail cleanups and trail access and trail management. Like those folks are doing some great work, like across the board. But I have 3 young kids. We have not stopped going into public land since they were born. And the one thing I have tried to part to them is one single phrase: leave it better. If at the very base minimum of any type of good trail usage, leave it better. Don't be a jackass trying to create new trails. Don't leave your trash. Like, pick up other people's trash. Whenever we go out into the backcountry or go out into any type of public lands, we're coming out with more than what we came in with. Like, we are picking up trash. Like, all my kids have their own mesh trash bags because they'll get mad at me if I don't stop as we're going along. They'll be like, no, Dad. Like, we're going to stop. There's a big piece of trash. If we can all do that, give people the right of way. Don't blow out people, eardrums with super loud motorcycles or whatever. Don't fly past campsites at like Mock Jesus in a UTV. If we can do those things, we would be better stewards and we would reduce that 90-10 rule.
Don't be an asshole.
Don't be an asshole. Simple. It's not that hard.
Last question before we let you go, since you mentioned your kids. What's been their favorite public lands adventure so far?
Ooh. They love taking our UTV. I have a Can-Am UTV. They love taking it up to these alpine lakes and then going swimming or fishing or something like that. My daughter, who's my oldest, has a dirt bike already. She's gonna turn 8. And a UTV, or not a UTV, ATV, has that too. Yeah, I haven't taken them hunting yet, although this year maybe. And I was joking with my wife the other day, and she's like, what do you think is going to happen with them? And I was just like, well, my youngest is going to cry. Very sweet soul. My middle can go either way, probably more on the crying side. And then my daughter would be like, if I got something down, hand me the knife. Feral child. I cloned myself, and that might not have been a great idea. But yeah, we live on a mountain. It's the last house or last neighborhood before National Park. So we technically live in public lands, not really, like obviously, but we're public lands adjacent. So they get to see moose and deer and bears and lions and woods almost every single day. I think it's a good place to grow up, and if I don't protect it and if we don't protect it, then that goes away. And I don't want to do that. I want them and their kids and their kids and their kids to have public lands. And hopefully they still have access. And hopefully we can fight back the powers that be.
It's a great place to leave it. Be in touch after that first trip. Maybe we'll get you and Jesse Johnson back on the podcast. We haven't had Jess in a while here, and we can see how that first hunting trip went with the kids. Jonathon Klein, editor-in-chief of RideApart. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll wrap up with a little good news, and we certainly need it today. Earlier this month, the Bureau of Land Management completed its acquisition of a 4,000-acre ranch in western Colorado, expanding the Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area south of Grand Junction. The Conservation Fund bought that ranch back in 2024 and held on to it for 2 years, while BLM lined up money under the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This is canyon country along the Gunnison River, home to a large herd of desert bighorn sheep, spanning nearly 30 miles of some of the most spectacular hidden landscapes in western Colorado. Also in Colorado, the state, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, acquired a 3,300-acre ranch near the Continental Divide in Gilpin and Boulder counties. That was funded in part by Habitat stamp purchases from hunters and anglers. It could open for hunting and fishing as early as this fall, and then also up in northern Minnesota, where we are headed with our family this summer, the Conservation Fund protected another 6,000 acres at Sax-Zim Bog, one of the premier birding destinations in the country and a critical stretch of boreal habitat. So that is over 13,000 acres of land protected in just the last few weeks. Not bad at all. Well, that will do it for this episode of The Landscape. If you enjoyed this, why not send it to a friend or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. Just do it right now. Smash that button. All right. Thanks to Lauren Bogard for joining me today. Thanks to Jonathon Klein for his insight. And thank you for listening to The Landscape.